Right. All right, I would like to reconvene and call the meeting to order for the Nisswa Planning Commission Board of Adjustment for Tuesday, June 1st, 2021. Roll call, please.
Don Jacobson.
Gary Harris.
Josh Young.
Kristen Hansen.
Dave Reese.
Maggie Wentler, Brittany Cotter.
Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next, to approve the meeting minutes for Monday, May 4th, 2021. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Next item is an open forum. If anybody has anything to say about anything that's not on the agenda this evening, we have one item that's going to be coming up, and I'll do that one first. That's on the open forum, and then we can go on after that. And that is the Pine Trail Homes condition change request. If I could have the applicant, why don't I just have you come to the desk, state your name, and kind of give us a brief overview of what's going on. And then if we have anybody that would like to make public comment, they can do that after that.
All right. I am Doug Arndt. I am president of Terra Vista Developers, which is the owner of the Pine Trails development. And we're actually selling the lots as they're sold to Thomas Allen Homes, Tom Dean. They're building the homes. Just a brief history, which you may be aware of. My late brother-in-law purchased the property, I believe in '07, so it predated my involvement. He bought it from a bankrupt developer, so none of us were involved in the conditional use permit or any of the conditions that were placed on the property. Since his passing in 2011, we kind of sat on the property and didn't do anything until about 2 years ago, and decided to proceed because the housing market was right. In reviewing the documents, a couple of things. The outlots that go down to Clark Lake, the minutes that I have and the approved, the recorded documents that went to the county actually show the restrictions on outlot C, as in Charlie. The outlot that goes down to the lake is outlot H, which you can see highlighted there. Be that as it may, we've stuck to nearly all conditions that were placed on that outlot down to the lake, meaning the width of the path and clearing dead vegetation and just generally cleaning it up. It was a mess. We've installed fences, ranch rail fences, along the property lines on both sides. So in reviewing the recorded documents, we decided to put a dock in simply for access for the neighborhood to go down and see the lake, sit and have a cup of coffee, put in a kayak or paddleboard if they'd like. But there's no storage allowed, no permanent structures other than the dock itself, which is arguably permanent. And we've left it, in a natural state as was described in the approvals. For those of you that were down there tonight or this afternoon, you saw readily that it's not what would be classified as navigable water. There's maybe a foot or two of water with heavy muck and weeds. There's no way that you could bring any sort of power boat in there. So it's just simply aesthetic to allow the neighborhood to access the lake potentially with non-powered watercraft. So we'd like to change and actually correct the recorded documents to show that we are allowed the dock And we're willing to put up, signage to the effect that there's no permanent storage, no overnight storage, no docking. And that's it. That's kind of where we are. That's the story.
Okay. Brittany, do you have anything to add?
To Doug's comment on the labeling of the outlot, on the preliminary plat, it's labeled C. On the final plat, half of it's C and half of it's H. Technicality, in my opinion, but that is the only addition I have.
Is there anybody that would like to speak towards the petition? No? Okay. Do you have any questions? I was going to start with Don.
No, I'm just here to help you.
Okay. Great.
No, I was looking at the two documents that one is obviously was preliminary plat stage. When the whole thing showed as outlot C, but then it was recorded as C and H. And I think Brittany has a point that it's a technicality. It certainly wasn't the intent of the restriction. So I'm just clarifying that.
I have a question about, so you are requesting it now. Once all the lots are sold, will the homeowners association take on that governance of this pathway and that dockage?
Right. Once we reach 75% sold, we're currently at 18 out of 45. Then we cease to manage the HOA, and the homeowners will be managing it themselves.
Okay. I guess the only concern that I had then was once it's turned over to somebody else, as per DNR regulation, once you have a docking, you are allowed to keep on going until you get to navigable water. So that's something that might happen in the future. I mean, that's not what your intent is, but it's something that could come up in the future where if this homeowners association wants to do it, I mean, it might be possible.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly put into our homeowners association agreement, we're already going to add the restrictions in there as far as, no storage and all that, because that was not included in both the recorded documents or in our agreements. Certainly be willing to put some language in there that says that, this is it.
Okay.
I think the concern here is probably dealing more with motorized watercraft than canoes and kayaks.
Well, if you can drive a powered boat in there and not get it stuck, more power to you.
Times and technology changes.
Right. Well, it's going to be posted, that it's non-motorized access only. No motorized boats are to be parked at the dock.
What does the original agreement or the original restriction call for? Just what's written here? No dockage, permanent structures, or motorized vehicles allowed on Outlet C?
Correct.
So
Yep.
that would also be Outlet C and Outlet H is what we're talking?
Correct.
So the variation from that would be dockage,
Just the dock.
the dockage term.
As it exists, correct.
Brittany, can we adjust the conditions to include what he was talking about with the association, that language had to be updated in the homeowners association? I mean, can that even be a condition?
I'd have to ask our city attorney with it being, 16 years old. I really don't know. Technically, the covenants are already halfway through their life. After 30 years, they just expire and go away. So I would question that. I'd have to check. I would say that even if we could legally do that, I think that it would be wise to table until we had such documents.
Okay.
Josh, since this is an existing plat that was approved by the city council, any change to it should be sent to the city council for a change or to keep it one way or another.
Kristen, do you have any questions?
I do not.
David, did you have any questions?
No.
Okay. In terms of format, Brittany, how does this work usually? Do they want us to do approval denial with conditions, or is it just approval denial? What
It
is,
would be recommendation to the council because council would
Right.
have final.
okay. Good. Would you
Yes.
like an opportunity to speak? Yes. Okay, please come to the podium and state your name and address.
Do you want me to go sit down?
It's up to you.
When you said for the condition, I was,
Can you speak?
oh, I'm sorry. That's why I was waiting. My name is Jane Aarons. I'm the current president of the Clark Lake Conservation Association. And I live at, my cabin is at 6859 Pinewood Point. So I represent 125 homeowners on the lake. And I'm going to start by just reiterating our position and our mission statement on Clark Lake. And it is to preserve and protect the environment of Clark Lake and the surrounding area for the benefit and well-being of people and wildlife for now and for the future. So in reading that statement, this lake association works year after year, decade after decade to improve our lake quality. We are opposed as a lake association and homeowners and lakeshore taxpayers to any change in this conditional use permit. There has been no support by any members or residents on the Clark Lake to support a change in this conditional use permit. This dock has been in place for 2 years in opposition to the current conditional use permit. And now the owner is asking for less restrictions. This is low land. It's a very sensitive environment. The DNR has not weighed in yet on what has happened on that land in terms of putting that dock in and the access to it. There is currently a channel there. I asked the owner this evening why there was a channel there, and he said, well, we can cut a 15-foot wide channel, which is accurate. You can do that. But the point of cutting that channel for kayakers, paddleboarders, and canoes seems kind of irrelevant because those non-motorized craft can go through anything. So we are concerned that the DNR has not had an opportunity to weigh in on this and on the high water line and what has been done to the shoreline. When we looked at this shoreline 2 years ago, we couldn't even access to where that dock is now because it was overgrown, it was wet, it was boggy. We had to go to a neighbor's lot to look. And when you say, the question came up about whether or not boats can get in there, boats can get anywhere. And to your point, sir, of technology has changed. The lot right next door, very similar land. They have jet skis, they have boats, they have dock, and they have solved their muck problem. So it is not an unsolvable problem, and a channel can organically happen with use over time. So Pine Trails, really is about selling home sites and amenities. On their website, they talk about Clark Lake. We're about protecting Clark Lake, short-term and long-term. And really only Pine Trails benefits from a change in this conditional use permit. There is a public access on Clark Lake. Anybody in the United States of America can come and launch a vehicle or a motorized craft, non-motorized craft at our public launch. So a dock there, as to your point, extensions can be put on docks to get to navigable water. That could entirely possibly happen there. And a dock invites abuse. It invites people to take an inch and then take a mile and then take another mile. So there is no tangible or enforceable assurances to the lake associations or the residents of Clark Lake that will prevent any abuse of this channel and this dock from happening. So non-motorized docks can be launched from shore without a dock. Entirely possible. People do it all the time. Signage means only guidance, not enforcements. And when the HOA takes over, as you said, a homeowners association, what happens then? And He talks about no parking on Norway Lane. Well, how are the homeowners going to be distinguished from people that are parking on Norway Lane that live there or they have company? How are you going to distinguish people who are in this car or that car? So just want to make sure I cover everything. This is not a little dock. There are extensions on land to get to the dock. Even, 45 homes there in that development that's it's slated for. Even paddleboards, kayaks, and canoes from 45 homes. We have 125, that's another 45 homes of pressure on Clark Lake. So in summary, this conditional use permit was issued with the good of Clark Lake in mind. And there is much more downside potential than upside potential for Clark Lake with a change. So we very respectfully asked this commission to keep the existing conditional use permit in place. And I'll address any questions you might have of the Clark Lake Association, and thank you.
Does Clark Lake still have a weed cutting operation that's for the benefit of the owners?
That is for the benefit of the lake, first and foremost. The DNR supports everything that we do with weed harvesting.
No, I understand.
Yes.
I'm just asking the
Oh, yes.
question if you
Yes,
still have
sir.
that program.
Yep, since the year I was born, 1953. Yes, it's still in place, and we own our own harvester. Our harvester does not travel, and it is still in place, and we have permits from the DNR. It's all done for the good of Clark Lake, and actually the DNR encourages us because the health of Clark Lake has improved dramatically with that weed harvesting, and the fish population has also improved dramatically. Don't share that, okay? So yes, we do have that, and that is entirely supported 100% by the residents on the lake. It's a voluntary operation.
Is that program available to them,
To an access lot,
to the Pine Trail homes?
they have an
As an owner, would that be an option for them to where they were to pay for their parts?
Not to have access for 45 homes to
Okay.
utilize.
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
It's-
Yep,
okay.
kind of violates the whole, cutting in there and creating a channel would kind of,
No, I understand.
violate the whole
Well-
concept here.
Even if there wasn't a dock there,
Mhm.
is it the Lake Association's understanding that they can still cut a channel to be able to get to navigable water?
They can cut a channel for navigable water, yes.
Right.
Any homeowner is allowed that in the state of Minnesota. It's 15 feet.
Right.
Wide channel, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, when I was there, it looked like it was a 15-foot channel.
That's
And
More or
that's
less.
fine. We have no objection to that. It's just that, when it encourages exploration, having a channel. But I guess our point is, what assurances will we have? Who's going to enforce this? And this, Mr. Arndt sent me an email with his proposals, but that's not a plan. Those are thoughts. We don't have an action plan. We don't have dates. We don't have, final language. We don't have any of that. And I would hope that if you're going to change that, you would want to have that information in hand as well, plus what the DNR's comments are. Because to walk this back would be very challenging for everybody. Any of my board members would like to speak? All good? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I asked you when we were out there, I had one additional comment about the wetland delineation.
right.
Now, I'm assuming this was done in 2006, but generally that's good for 10 years. And then a new one has to be done. Generally, it's a 10-year term or one, because it changes. The lake levels will change, so something has to be done. So that was brought up, and it looked like, when I was walking there, it looked like it's pretty much settled where that delineation would be, but we don't have anything on record to go by. So that would be the only question that I would have, if we would have to have an updated delineation if it was to be approved.
By statute, no, just because they are allowed a boardwalk over any distance of wetlands, so they'd be fine in that regard.
But you don't know exactly where that wetland would start and where it would end, is my point.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. All right, any additional comments?
I'm thinking that we need there's two things that enter into this. One, we've got a change in the designated restrictions by outlot classification, by numbering from the preliminary to the final plat. And then whether or not we have the ability to go back and change conditions from 2006. I think the city attorney needs to chime in on this thing before we make any recommendation one way or the other to the city council. That's that's where I'm looking at this.
Well, you can recommend for or against the change and send it to the council. It's up to the council to determine whether or not they want to agree with you or not.
Okay. That's true.
Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion from either of you two if you would like to put forward a table, approve or deny.
I'll put forward a motion regarding Pine Trail Homes condition change request, pertaining especially to the term dockage, whether the dock is allowed or not. I would, at this point, I don't see well, that's not part of the motion, but I would recommend that the conditions stay the way they were in 2006 and the dockage not be allowed.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I will be opposed. So a motion carries to deny.
That's a
Or
recommendation.
recommendation to the council to
Technically,
deny.
it should be recommend to the city council.
Yes. Sorry about that.
So you'll have another opportunity to speak to the council.
Right, yeah, and I'll work with Brittany on it.
Okay,
Get it figured out. Thank you.
thank you. All right, is there anyone else present that would like to speak towards anything not on the agenda? All right. Moving on to public hearings, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, first item is a rezone application 009-21 to change zoning classification from open space residential OSR to shoreline residential SR. The subject property is located at the corner of Upper Roy Lake Road and Bass Lake Road, PID 281-00668. Owner Genevieve Donovan Trust, applicant Ray Lake Home Townhomes LLC. If the applicant can come to the desk first. So how I'd like to do this is we're going to have the applicant speak. We're going to ask them questions. And then after they get done, then I would like to open it up where people can make public comments. I want to stress this from the last time. Sometimes our questions may seem a little redundant. We might not already know the answers to the questions, but sometimes we want to have that stated on the record, and we want to have the applicant the opportunity to speak.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just for the benefit of the commissioners and the people in the audience, the rezoning is either an up or down with no conditions at all.
Right.
And secondly, whatever the motion is to accept it or to reject it, make sure that you attach the findings of fact and any other findings of fact during the meeting here that helps the council either go along with or deny your decision.
Okay. Brittany, let's start with your staff report first.
Thank you. As you stated, the applicant is requesting the rezoning of a 17.2 acre parcel from open space residential to shoreland residential. The surrounding area is a mix of shoreland residential to the south and east and open space residential to the north and west. You do have two different findings of facts reports in front of you, one for approval and one for denial. I will entertain any questions though you may have. And as Don said, we cannot place conditions on a rezone.
Right off the bat, just so we have some background information, can you tell the commission what our last with the parcel that was to the south of here, what happened? We had made a motion to deny. Can you kind of elaborate?
Correct. We did make a recommendation of denial to the city council, which they ultimately did overturn and approve the rezoning to the south.
Okay.
I haven't received any feedback at this time, though, from any councilman or anything. So.
And that was rezoned to SR?
Correct. Yep.
The applicant, do you want to kind of give us an overview of what the plans are? Why you were seeking to change the zoning?
Sure.
Specifically for the zoning?
Sure. My name is Cindy Hitty. I'm with Stonemark Land Surveying, and I am representing my client who is looking at developing this piece of property. He would like to do townhomes, which means it's more of a cluster development, trying to preserve half, a minimum of half, if not more, of the property, and clustering the development in a certain area that is the best area on the property, which in this case is more fairly far off of the lake. It's because of the terrain. We are asking for a rezone from OSR to SR. It gives them the ability to use a different density calculation. It doesn't increase the density all that much. And at this point, we don't know exactly even if it will matter. We have done rough calculations. Do you have any questions?
Cindy, will you just make sure you talk into your microphone?
You can pull that over to you.
Perfect.
The whole thing can be moved.
Do you want me
Yeah.
to repeat that whole thing?
No,
No.
we got it.
Okay, good, because I don't remember what I said.
I can start over by Gary here.
It's a really nice piece of property. You know, it's very, we were unable to get up on top where the housing is shown here, just mainly because we didn't want to go through the forest to get there, but it's, last month, you were around and Mr. Steffens gave us a preliminary sketch plan that indicates 12 units on this particular one. I'd mentioned at that point last month that this shows three units that are pushed out up to the top of the slope there, and they're actually hanging over the slope. I guess I can understand the views and maybe that they're probably worth a few dollars more than the others would be. I come from a development background and I fully understand that. So, but we have to wear two hats in life. And
Yes, you do.
I was curious if the road was pushed closer to the bluff line and you didn't come back with, the client doesn't have a revised site plan tonight, anything that we can look at that would be a basis for the rezoning application as I would see it. But if that road was pushed closer to the slope and the buildings were all pushed over to the, behind the road over, because there's a substantial amount of open property back in there that works as a buffer to the adjoining property, but it just seems like there could be a little different arrangement here so far as locations for the future buildings, and it might be worth looking at. And something like that could lend itself to more of a positive approach to a view of rezoning this. So with this property now, it's got SR. It's got SR to the east. It's got SR to the south. Correct. And it's got OSR to the northwest. Okay.
This is more of a question for city staff. Now that we went through the process with the previous application, legally speaking, from a legal background, if we can get feedback from the county attorney, there has to be a basis to deny the application when you just approved a different one.
Yes, since two parcels never occupy the same space, rezoning of one does not equal precedent for rezoning of the second.
Okay, can we make can the condition be based on the type of residence that's being proposed? Because now we're going through the zoning process and we're not looking at a preliminary plat anymore, whereas Josh had given us a preliminary plat, so we had a kind of an idea.
Yeah.
Does that preliminary plat need to be required or even looked at to be able to look at a rezone application and be able to have an informed decision if this is going to work or it's not going to work?
It doesn't, just because they are two independent applications, even though they do heavily overlap, they are independent. I'm sorry, I forgot the first part of your question. I was too busy thinking about the.
No, I don't remember my first part of my question.
Well, you want the rezoning so that you've got the ability to increase the density slightly,
Potentially, yes.
potentially.
Right.
We don't know that
We
for
don't
sure
know
at this
that.
point.
We're trying to decide, if my client's trying to decide if he wants to put the money up front to do the calculations, and, SR would be a benefit.
Right.
Would be a benefit with a different calculation.
And
so
he had asked previously if he could go above and beyond that again, and he got feedback from us saying,
Right.
probably not.
Right, and
Okay.
so he's trying to weigh his options as a developer, but also, looking at the best interest of this property.
Understand.
Kristen, do you have any questions?
Has anything been decided about the road going through, or is that still Public Works?
The last I heard, the Savageau development was gonna place an easement along where the extension or connection rather would go. And then we would essentially decide as a city at some point, whether it be to bond to build it, or, if we don't utilize the easements in X amount of years, they would essentially just go away. But Public Works and engineer met that compromise. And it would go through Mr. Savageau's property. It wouldn't go through this property.
Okay, thank you.
David, did you have any questions?
Just a few notes that I jotted down for rezoning. The things that I'm thinking about are compatibility with adjacent zoning, compatibility with the environment, and compatibility with area infrastructure, and the support of the additional units if this was rezoned by the area infrastructure. So, we've had discussion with the previous application about roadway primarily, and some talk about the environment and the impact to that area, and then the adjacent zoning. Okay, so I think it's compatible with adjacent zoning since that's recently been approved. But some of the other ones are still a little bit foggy at this stage without more definitive plans. So compatibility with those things are what I think about with rezone.
Don, do you have any feedback from the city council?
On this particular item, no. And the only thing is that on the other parcels that surround this, they decided not to go along with the planning commission's recommendation and did rezone it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this parcel would meet the same fate. You have to remember, even though you're looking at sketch plans, your sketch plans don't have anything in it for you to look at because it's not zoned for what they were thinking of. So you can't attach anything to this. It's either it's proper to rezone it or it's not proper to rezone it, period. If you have problems with the sketch plan, that comes after a rezoning is either approved or denied. But you can't look at the sketch plan and say, I don't like the sketch plan, therefore I'm not going to vote for it, or I'm going to vote for it.
On the adjoining parcel that was rezoned, can you elaborate on some details on why the city council chose to override our recommendation?
Well, I voted I voted against the city council motion, so.
Provide what their feedback was.
I think they felt that it was about time to take a look at doing something to it. The property's been there for quite a long time, and maybe a higher, better use.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, Mr. Chair.
No.
No? All right, I would like to give the opportunity for the audience to speak towards the application. I'll give one person each 5 minutes, again, to state your name, address, and then give us your thoughts.
Hi, thanks for having us again. My name's Trish Van Pilsum, 15600 Post Road in Wayzata. We have a lake place in Nisswa on Bass or Ray Lake. My opinion is that once the lakes are gone, Nisswa is gone. So once we destroy those, you might as well move north on 371. Once the lakes are gone, Nisswa is gone. Now, these are not my words or the words of my neighbors, although I suspect many of us would agree with them. These are the words of Brittany Kottner, who was nice enough to meet with several of us a week or so ago. And during that meeting, she acknowledged the special nature of Ray or Bass Lake and the city's special responsibility to safeguard it. So why do I bring that comment up now? Well, I think because it affirms just how much is at stake here. And because I'm told the city council believes our concerns about this zoning change and the other, the developments that could come from this and the other zoning change simply stem from our unwillingness to accept change. We don't like change. Do we want Bass Lake to change? Nah. I mean, it's gorgeous. We love it. But do we really expect it not to change? No. It's not practical. Have we seen countless changes over the years? Absolutely, we have. Bigger houses, more boats, a new boardwalk even, just recently. And you never heard a peep from us. Not one peep. This is different. We're here because, like all of you, we are genuinely concerned about the environmental impact of letting the developer build more units than what is currently allowed under the ordinance, more units than this parcel of land can handle, and more units than the lakes can handle. And others tonight will give you specific facts relating to those issues. But I just wanted to say one more thing by way of overview. Unlike the rezone application you considered back in April for the adjoining or so-called Savageau property, city staff this time has given you two options, one to approve and one to deny. So you have what you need right in front of you to just say no. But that's not the only difference between the two rezoning applications. I think this is really important. Now, first of all, I want to be clear that many of us believe that the city council was wrong when it overturned this commission's recommendation to deny the Savageau zoning request, in part because the council adopted those findings of fact that we believe weren't facts at all, but they were just statements made by the developer which went unchallenged and were not adequately analyzed by staff. But we also believe the city council reversed your decision based on inaccurate information. Now, before the council voted, Brittany said, I have talked to the developer. He has been informed he will be required to provide an environmental impact worksheet. That's just not the case. Now the city is telling me that the city might require that, and they might not. Certainly not as definitive as it was presented to the city council. But even if you accept the city council's improper decision on the Savageau property, there are enough significant differences between that application and the one you're considering tonight to justify a no vote tonight. For example, oh, and by the way, Stefan's statement that if Savageau got it, he should get it, this does not carry water. And that's true for several reasons. Unlike the Savageau property, all of the lake access in this property is on Bass or Ray Lake, all of it. Second, unlike Ray Lake, or unlike Roy, Ray and Bass, or Bass, is a natural environment lake, which according to the DNR deserves a higher standard of care. Roy Lake is a general development lake. Third difference between the two applications, the entire Bass Lake shoreline in this parcel is wetland, the protection of which is regulated by the city, the county, and federal laws. forth in terms of density, the impact of this rezone is much greater than the rezone of the adjoining property. Now, we don't know for sure what they're talking about, but Tom Steffens has proposed to increase unit density by, not a slight amount, by 60%. 60%. And we know based on his sketch plans that this is a much more dramatic departure from the recent developments in the area. I mean, gone is his initial sketch plan with freestanding cottages. Now we're talking townhomes and lots of docks and boats and boardwalks. An application for rezoning should be carefully scrutinized, especially in a sensitive area. A developer should not walk in here and say, I assume I'm going to get this rezone because somebody else did. You have the right and the responsibility to deny this request. And yes, this is an emotional issue for us. I think you've seen that. But our arguments against this rezone proposal are not based on emotion, but on facts. And that's what all of my fellow residents are going to come up here and talk about, the facts. We'll start with Paul.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Paul Rasmussen. I live at 25221 Bass Lake Road in Nisswa. And obviously, we are very opposed to the application to rezone the land from OSR to SR for many reasons. Other people here tonight to speak about that. You know, we're here discussing an application to rezone, and you're absolutely right to point out the fact that we don't even have proper plans or anything definitive about what's going to be put on this land. And in fact, Tom Steffens was very clearly avoided answering any questions that, when he was given an opportunity at your last meeting. The only reason they're asking for this ordinance change is to increase the density. What other reason could there be? And it's not just slight, it's significant. And density is the number one influence, harmful effect on the environment. He wants to increase the density so he can increase his profit. If you look at the other developments by Mr. Steffens, you will see they are high density in order to maximize his profit. We are concerned about that because that is absolutely inconsistent with the Bass Lake as a natural environmental lake, and it should be inconsistent, and it is inconsistent with the Nisswa plan, the 2030 plan. But what I want to focus on are the 15 criteria that are set forth in the ordinance that you must consider in order to approve the ordinance. It's very clear. It's laid out for you, 15 of them. Go right through them and ask the developer, how does this zoning application meet that criteria? Hasn't provided one reason, hasn't provided one rationale for why his zoning application meets any of the criteria. The staff report lists the criteria, but doesn't provide any reasoning why the zoning application, the increased density meets the criteria. For example, the first criteria, preservation of natural sensitive areas. Well, it should be the developer's obligation and burden to tell you why his development meets this application, meets this criteria. It doesn't. Increased density does not preserve, does not enhance the preservation of natural sensitive areas. How could it? That's the whole reason why we limit the amount of density that a developer is allowed to put on an environmentally sensitive land. So if you go through the rest of the 15 criteria, I'd argue that none of them are met. I sent you a letter that laid out each one of these and my thoughts about each one of these criteria. I hope you've received the letter and I hope you've read it. Because it probably doesn't, it's not worth our time for me to go through each one of these right now out loud because other people have things to say. What we're talking about is a PUD on this land. We fully expected someday someone would develop this land, build a few homes there. Not a PUD. With 20-some houses, 20-some units. Well, they first called townhomes, now they're called cottages, now they're called townhomes. And there's no information from the developer as what he wants to do. Just some plans that are sketched and subject to change at any time. No commitments. The other criteria that you must consider that are absent, completely absent from your statement of fact, which is also the same problem that the city council has on their approval of the zoning change for the lower parcel. Again, based on no facts, no conclusion, no rationale that the zoning change met the criteria. The shoreland, soil tapes, and the engineering capabilities. There's a significant amount of wetlands on the parcel, but the staff reports do not consider the ramifications of increased density in the wetlands. Nowhere in this report. The staff reports provide no information that quantifies the negative environmental impact on Bass Lake from the proposed higher density made possible by the zoning change. Nowhere in this report is the impact, is that discussed. The vegetation cover, you're supposed to consider that criteria. It's not discussed. The in-water physical characteristics, what grows in the lake? What types of rare plants are there? We know that the pug-nosed shiner, which is a rare species, the rare species guide in the DNR is there. Why isn't that addressed? Why isn't anyone answering this? We know that increased density is going to harm the lake. It has to, it will. But there's no information. No one's addressed it. What about the recreational use of the water? You must consider that. It's not considered in the finding of facts.
We have about 30 more seconds.
Okay, well, and that brings up, and I will just then pass my time to somebody else, but I think that brings up a really interesting point. The developer can bring forth a proposal with unlimited time and arguments about the proposal, but who is here to stand up for the natural environment? Who's here to stand up for the lakes, other than someone who has 5 minutes to address our concerns? So I really, really want you to please pay attention to the criteria that you are obligated to consider. Look at the staff report and make sure that the staff report and your recommendation includes reasons and rationales why the criteria are met. How increased density, adding more homes to the sensitive land, meets the criteria that you're required to meet. And remember that for zoning change, the zonings may be changed. This is from the city ordinances. A zoning change may only be used as a means to reflect changes in the goals of the community or changes in the conditions of the city. How does increasing density on this land reflect a change in the goals of the community or changes in the conditions of the city? I suggest that allowing Mr. Steffens to increase the number of homes on this parcel does neither. So please, deny this application to rezone this land. There's no purpose for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Hi, Scott Barron at 912 Bass Lake Road. And just to continue some thoughts as far as the environmental part, we don't want to beat a dead horse here, but there are some other aspects that we wanted to bring up as well. So the one part that we keep asking ourselves as a group as we consider some of the things that you're looking at doing, and goes back to the Nisswa 2030 comprehensive plan. And, we look at that and say there's statements in there that talk about preserving certain lands, that forever to make this area what it is. Beautiful lakes, all the rest of this. And Don had mentioned earlier the fact that this land has sat vacant for quite some time. Why do you think that is? And all the rest of it has been, pretty much developed along the lake shores. This is tough. This is not the kind of place that you'd want to plunk down a cottage, because this particular parcel, all the lakeshore is wetlands, okay? So supposedly you visited there today, and I hope you saw that, because it's all wetlands. And so I think there are certain aspects of this land and other lands that you would consider, and we ask ourselves, if you won't protect this land as part of your comprehensive plan, what land will you protect? That's just, it's baffling us. This is part of it. And then you start to get into elevations and how they would handle the density and then the boat traffic and so on. We keep going that way. And as a matter, all of you know exactly what an environmental assessment worksheet is. And just for public record, we're being recorded here, just so that everyone here knows. An EAW is a brief document designed to lay out the basic facts of a project necessary to determine if an environmental impact statement is required for the proposed project. In addition to the legal purpose of the EAW in determining the need of an environmental impact study, the EAW also provides permit information, informs the public about the project, and helps identify ways to protect the environment. It must be carried out in accordance with Minnesota Rules 4410 by an independent expert. And Don had mentioned that in some of the earlier meetings that the developers had offered to do this study. And he says, isn't that kind of like a fox guarding the hen house? And we agree with that entirely. So then going further with the environmental impact statement, the EIS, because the city of Nisswa has been bringing together two developers of the north and south parcels regarding roads, density, and so on, we believe that based on the number of units proposed by Steffens, along with the units proposed by Savageau, would automatically trigger the need for an environmental impact statement, not just an EAW, and also to be conducted by an independent expert. The claim has been made also about Bass Lake, Ray Lake being an environmental lake, a national environmental lake. And as mentioned, the entire shoreline along that is all wetlands. And we think about this with boardwalks trying to access that is not only impractical, but it also could be a potential safety hazard for the people involved. And then how far out, the DNR says you can extend a dock as far out as you need. It's another reason nobody's got docks on that side of the lake, because you would have a dock practically in the middle of the lake. It's 148 acres. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And the boat traffic along with that doesn't either. So the one last part of this that I'd like to make clear is that Tom Steffens has displayed a significant lack of compliance with other zoning rules in other developments he's done. So, and please note that what I'm doing here is submitting a evidence copy of a cease and desist order from the city of Pequot Lakes as one example. So should I pass this to Brittany, or who should, someone should receive this as saying this has been officially added? Thank you. So I encourage you to make the effort when you're doing research on who's proposing these developments, some of their background as far as either financing or the way that they go about actually treating the residents and the city that they develop in. And so this has been a situation with Pequot where, again, to do your research, encourage you to talk to some of the current or former members of the Cullen Lakes Association regarding their experiences that they've had. And I'm not into saying anything about a person. This is all factual information. This public information that you can do your own research on. And so with that type of past behavior, we're wondering what would allow you or empower you to say, this is the kind of person that we want to grant special benefits to in this zoning situation, and believe that you should not be doing this. So, thank you.
Please state your name and address.
Yes, I'm Ginger Olson, and it's 25468 Roy Lane. And am I allowed to ask Brittany a question? What I don't see up there is Stefan's plan, and I understand that you have requested easements, or Public Works has requested easements from his property also?
No, for the Savageau property, which is the one to the south.
Only for the south, so there are no easements being requested?
Not at this time, no. We haven't gotten to the preliminary plat stage though, so not to say that one couldn't come, but as of now, no.
Okay. You might want to call me the road lady. I'm always interested about the road. In particular, as a resident of Nisswa, I would object to the proposal of any action on this project, that it be taken until the issue of Bass Lake Road and what would happen with Roy Lane is fully evaluated. If you don't do that, you really can't know what it is you're dealing with. In lieu of some of the comments that have been made about the developer of this project, things don't always happen exactly the way they're stated. And if it's not followed very well, things could take place. So let's take worst case scenario. Without knowing any of this, I don't think you, without those easements and everything else in front of you, can make a viable decision to allow this to go through. I would deny it. You just can't do it. And if you think about then adding this density, let's add the density to it, and then maybe allow that easement, which kind of has, I think, been discussed possibly, you put those two easements together and you throw them on Roy Lane. And I'd like you to just pretty much think about the 2030 proposal, which the city has. And one of it says, it tells you about a typical road that is a lakeshore road. And so many of them, Roy Lane and Bass Lake Road, actually amplify what that is. And it's pretty much not heavily trafficked road, doesn't follow all of the great designs of what a good road should be, follows shorelines, and it describes Bass Lake Road, and it describes Roy Lane. Suddenly now we have an addition of 12 new residences, we hope, because again, we haven't seen that final plan from the Savdell. But that puts us at 30 already. And Roy Lane is not the safest road out there. It's got a lot of topography, and we've already had one death that was discussed about earlier. You guys might not have heard about that. But when you start thinking about what is the safety to the citizens of Nisswa, and Nisswa is such a unique city, we're a lake city. Everything about us is cool lake stuff. Bass Lake Road is, Roy Lane is. We potentially, if the worst case scenario took place, besides getting Bass Lake Road put on there, which is 38 residents more than our 18, start running your numbers, and let's say you had another 20, we could be pushing 80. Think about it on a small road with 50 kids on it. Bass Lake Road has 0. So I thank you for thinking about this. I hope you really sincerely think about the safety of the citizens, because it's in the 2030 plan. Think about the safety of it and the beauty of our area. Density in this area isn't going to work. Thank you.
Please state your name and address.
Brad Berkland, 972 Bass Lake Road and 924 Bass Lake Road. Our family owns the property. So if it's okay, can I read just a letter that I submitted to you guys? Our family owns 2 properties on Bass or Ray Lake, and we oppose rezoning the 17.2 acre parcel from open space residential to shoreline residential. We do not feel that the zoning change fits with the rural character of this natural environment lake, and we do not feel that this zoning change would benefit the city of Nisswa or the city of Lakeshore, and it would negatively affect the enjoyment of the lake for visitors and residents for years to come. It's one of the only spots on the Go Lake chain that still has, it really still has that the rural feel. And we fear that a rezone could jeopardize this very special and sensitive lake that's enjoyed by not only residents of Bass Ray Lake, but it's enjoyed by residents and visitors of the entire Go Lake chain. You know, on busy days, people come from all over to enjoy this quiet and serene beauty, especially of that undeveloped section of the lake. So we get people from Grandview, from everywhere, who come and, you know, they can get some quiet time when otherwise on Go Lake chain, there aren't many places where you can get that. We urge you to consider the land use criteria for rezoning in our perspective on just a few of those. I'm going to I'll cut it short, but preservation in natural sensitive areas, I won't go over that. Present ownership and development. We we just kind of feel there's a disconnect between the owner and developer and then the residents of Bass or Ray Lake in terms of the character of this lake. We don't even know if they realize that residents and visitors don't call this Ray Lake. It's never been, we've never called it Ray Lake. It just feels, you know, like a top down to us. It feels like they're imposing a renaming on us and like we're trying to rebrand this lake as Ray Lake. Topographical characteristics, I won't go over that. Vegetative cover, won't go over that. Recreational use of the surface water. We fear that this rezone will overstress an already overstressed small and shallow natural environment lake, which has a very limited capacity for assimilating the impacts of development and recreational use. And that's, you know, it really is. It's if you look at the lake, I mean, now when you look at this time of year, you don't really see all the vegetation that is going to grow. So the lake is much, much smaller than, like, if you guys looked out at it today, it looks like you could really put boats right there. But if you come in the middle of July, it's a lot different. And I think people maybe have talked about that. H, road and service center accessibility. We fear that the rezone could increase the likelihood of rerouting Bass Lake Road through Roy Lane, like other people have talked about. But we also fear that that would basically just give unhindered access to these homes. Without the road, they'd be able to get right. There'd be much more, there'd be increased traffic to that special part of the lake. And, you know, it would definitely change the rural character of the entrance to Bass Lake Road for people who come through there. I mean, even dogs get excited when they come in cars and enter Bass Lake Road because it's totally unique. There's no, I mean, they feel like they're in the woods. They feel that this, you know, they can feel this instinctively that this is a rural area, you know, and that's what we hope we could maintain that.
30 seconds.
Okay. Public sewer, we're afraid of a larger common septic system then I guess we'll cut to conformance of the city of Nisswa land use plan. From our point of view, the parcel was never considered shoreland property, and we feel that the Nisswa's future use map designation as rural preservation was set for a reason. And if that has changed, we don't know why or if it has changed. So from our perspective, this rezone poses serious risks to the lake and would be irresponsible to the long-term health of Bass, Ray Lake, Gull Lake Chain, the city of Nisswa, city of Lakeshore, and the enjoyment of this lake for generations to come. So we hope you'll not recommend rezoning from open space to shoreline development. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Tom Cameron, 986 Bass Lake Road. I didn't plan on saying anything tonight, but I jotted down a few notes and I said, I gotta bring this up. Mr. Young, you, at one point, you were kind of comparing the two, Savigny and Stephens. I don't think it's a fair comparison. If Savigny goes by what he had on his sketch plan, he's got, I believe it's 11 homes on over 20 acres. Stephens is trying to put like 13 homes or more on 17 acres. If you look at the Savigny plan, he's got 2-acre lots. Stephens has got everything grouped together. And if you look what he has, he's only got 598 feet of lakeshore for 14 people, or 14 residences. The other thing that was concerning to some people, Savigny has got single-family homes. We're not sure what Stephens is going to have. If you look at his application, rezoning application, the name of the applicant is Ray Lake Townhomes LLC. So that townhomes kind of scares me a little bit. You folks went and did a tour today, and I just want you to realize also that you saw Bass Lake at its largest. We're going to have lily pads growing up, wild rice growing up, bulrushes growing up. And according to the DNR, Bass Lake is 142 acres. 112 of those acres are called littoral acres, which means that there's vegetation. So that leaves 30 acres of clear water for people to use. I really would oppose anything that's going to give any huge density to that fragile lake. I thank you so much. Thank you.
Hello, I'm John Leedy. I live at 4015 Upper Roy Lake Road. So I own the property that's immediately adjacent to Upper Roy Lake Road, but also Roy Lake Lane, right in that corner. And then across the street, also along Roy Lake Road, and immediately adjacent to the proposed project. So I have a direct impact really on what appears to be two sides, because it looks like this affects Upper Roy Lake Road as well, that kind of small bar there. So I'm adjacent on two sides. I'm going to be really brief. One, I appreciate all of you listening to all of us tonight. You appear to really be listening intently, so really thank you for that. And Mr. Harris, I thought you really summed up my point of concern, my concern of the property value in your one comment about the buffer zone, that there's these properties there that create a buffer zone to whatever this development is. That's me. That's my land there that will become the buffer zone. When we bought that, no intent of it being a buffer zone. There's just beautiful surroundings there. It's not a buffer zone, but it will be. That's exactly what it will be, and my property values are just going to plummet because it's really just, in essence, a buffer. So with that, again, thank you for hearing us out.
Hello, I'm Rob Habercorn. I live on Bass Lake Road. Thanks for the opportunity. You know,
Could we get
reminded
sorry,
tonight.
could we get your address real quick, just for the record?
Address?
Your home address?
1002 Bass Lake Road.
Thank you.
And, you know, we're all beginners, you know, we're talking about this stuff. And so we're all trying to understand and learn quickly as to what's going on. And I was reminded tonight too by the Clark Lake discussion, how long-term the impact of some of these decisions are when it gets passed on to the new owners and new associations and all this stuff, and rules expire and covenants and all that. So it really is an important decision that's hard to walk back if that need arises. But we all know that, you know, development has a negative impact on our lakes. That's what all of these things are about. And we oppose the rezoning to shoreline residential so that it would increase the density. Bass Lake is classified as a natural environment lake in an effort to protect what's important to all of us. And the fragile shorelines, the wetlands, boating safety, natural environment, it's all been discussed in great detail. It's some of the most sensitive on the Gull Lake chain. You know, what happens there affects other lakes. What happens in on that road, affects people on the next road, everybody in Nisswa and Lakeshore. You know, it's our whole, you know, it's very well laid out in the comprehensive plan that Nisswa put together, what, like 3 years ago. It seems that the only, so development has a negative impact, and especially when you're looking at wetland shoreline like that, and to increase the density only makes the issues that we're talking about more important or worse. Some people might have the impression that this is a not in my backyard mentality, but I think it's grown, it's gotten way over past that. It's important to the environment, to the lakes. It's not rooted in that. There's just no reason. We haven't heard any good reason to allow increased density. What benefit are we going to get from increasing density? And we haven't heard that. So we don't, the current zoning seems to be adequate and appropriate for Bass Lake, and it was established as such. So we just want to go on record as opposing the application. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Okay. Please state your name and address.
Dave Anderson, 920 Bass Lake Road in Lakeshore. And I think I've been here before. This looks very familiar. So anyway, you know, one of the things I really want to focus on is your comprehensive plan. I don't think I've ever read a better comprehensive plan in a city. And I did a lot of work with the city of Minnetonka when I lived there and was on some various committees and so forth, trying to protect lands and waters and so forth. But you guys did a great job. The people that wrote this, whoever did a wonderful job. I just want to point out a couple little things out of there that I want to really think deeply about, because you put it in writing for a good reason. And this comes out of the Natural Resources Overview and Policy. And I'm quoting here: because local lakes are such a vital part of Nisswa's economy, ensuring their natural health and well-being is essential. Since a large portion of shoreline in the city has already been developed with homes, the physical condition of the lakes could be negatively impacted. These effects may further be amplified when additional growth occurs. Development on Lakeshore has been shown to increase nutrient levels in lakes and increase shoreline erosion, leading to an increase in algae blooms and suspended sediments. This decrease in lakes' water clarity and degrades the habitat for many species in the surrounding area. That's a quote from your plan. And it makes a difference, especially on Bass Lake, where we are very fortunate to not have had a whole lot of infestation of invasive species. We do have zebra mussels, like every place on the chain pretty much has now, but its lake effect on Bass Lake has been minimal. And I know this because I've been doing the water clarity tests for over 30 years on Bass Lake, and it's remained quite stable through that time, whereas you see other parts of the Gull Lake chain are not going in a good direction. And algae blooms are becoming a constant problem. The Lake Association hears about that all the time, that this is just something that's getting out of control. And a lake as shallow as Bass Lake is, you know, it's advertised as being 25 feet deep, one spot in the middle. The rest of it's very shallow as you get out to the edges. So it isn't a deep, good lake for purposes of protecting it from invasive species. And also I'd like to point out just a couple of the policies portion of that. Number one was to maintain the water clarity and quality of area lakes. This policy is a top natural resource priority of the community. Holy cow, how much better can you get than that, than the top priority? And that's where I say monitoring makes a difference. We've got monitors all over the lakes keeping track of that. Number two, ensure that development and redevelopment of shoreline properties does not detract and, where possible, improves the water quality of the lake. How in heaven's name is this development or either one of them going to actually improve the water quality? I don't see any way that could happen. Number four, I'm skipping over a couple others that aren't particularly relevant, but protect wetlands is number four. Protect wetlands, an important component of the total environmental health of the community. The city must value and protect wetlands as the first component of placing value on total environmental quality. Again, first, I'm hearing this word over and over again. Please pay attention to that, because it makes a difference. And, you know, multiple boardwalks across over 100 feet of marshland or bogs just doesn't seem like the way to protect the natural environment. So number 7, this is the last one I'll read, I promise you. While high value, this is called provide for wildlife habitat and migration. While high value habitat areas have been reduced by development, the remaining should be protected and limited to the greatest extent possible to provide for habitat migration throughout the community. And we know for a fact from people that are experts on loons, I don't know if you know Sheila Johnston, but she knows more about loons than most anybody would ever know. Bass Lake is a nesting area, and it's also a gathering area where loons come in that specific area that's being concerned for development. And many birds, various birds nest in that area, bald eagles and so forth. So, you know, I just want to go on record that I'm not opposed to development. I mean, we've been on Bass Lake now for 34 years, and we've seen virtually every empty lot on Bass Lake Road and Trail developed, and without a complaint, because that's just what happens. It was zoned that way, planned that way, and that's okay. So this isn't about us not wanting development. It's all about that piece of land that deserves to be protected rather than turned over to developers who want to make money on it. I'm sorry to say it that way, but that's the way it appears. Will they be here in the long run? I'm here for the long run. But will the developer be around to make sure that it's done and taken care of over the years? I would be suspect of that. And you do have some options. And one came across your desk in the form of a letter from a former city planner, that's Ann Beaver. I hope you've read that, because she gave you another option that's worth looking at. You don't have to do this. It is up to you to make a decision that's right for the city, right for the property, right for the people that are concerned in this, and not be swayed by persuasions from developers. So I do say that development is where it makes sense is fine. And it happens in many areas, and you've got developments going on all over the city right now, and that's fine. And that's kind of the way the cities work. But we could really destroy Nisswa if this goes on to the point of this is no longer the special Nisswa anymore that has been claimed to be over years by many, many experts. So I encourage you to deny this request for rezoning. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. I'll close public comments for this since we're done. Do we have any follow-up questions from the commission members, Don or anybody else?
No questions.
There's a possibility, and I haven't suggested this for a long time, but the possibilities you have tonight is to deny or to agree to a zoning change. There is a third possibility here that hasn't been commented on, and that's an EAW, Environmental Assessment Worksheet. It's a, if I could use the term, quick and dirty way to look at a project to see what the environmental consequences are. Most of the issues relating to this property we heard about tonight relate to environmental issues for the most part. An environmental assessment worksheet can be, you could request it from the city council. They're not too expensive, a couple $1,000, be borne by the developer, to take a look at the parcels, look in the literature. Has the University of Minnesota or anybody else done any studies on this area in the past? There are a whole bunch of things that you can check off in an EAW, and that would help you determine what your vote would be to approve or deny. It's just another option. I thought I'd bring it up, but you can think about it.
It would be the applicant's responsibility to provide.
He'd have to pay for it. The applicant would not do the AW. You get an independent source.
Correct. I'm just talking about the monetary. He would be responsible for paying for that EAW in order for the rezone.
If you wanted to go ahead, yeah.
Okay. Gary, did you have any questions?
Yeah, that's, well, I guess you say they're questions, comments anyway.
Okay.
Looking at this site, you know, it's the developable property that's on this site is the eastern half of the site. Nothing much on the west can be developed, much beyond what the road that's there, the current, Bass Lake Road where it goes through. The boardwalk across the wetlands and going out to a dockage area looks like to me like the main stumbling block for encroachment into harming Ray or Bass Lake, whatever you want to call it. I'm trying to grasp what the development up on top of this hill or on top of the bluff, how that would impact Ray Lake in a negative way or in a positive way, but especially everybody's here against it because of the negative impacts on the lake. And I'm trying to figure out where those would come from. All of the drainage water that's a part of the development on top would all be kept on top and keep it in sedimentation basins and allowed to drain off naturally. The septic system, I suppose if you stretched it way out, is at some point is going to impact groundwaters. But that's happening everywhere. So what's the amount of developer, what's the density we'd have on this property if it stayed with the current zoning? What would be the max that they could put on it?
I don't know that answer, mostly because as we were talking at the site visit, a true delineation and survey and topo has not been done. So we don't know the numbers, but I can tell you the difference between the OSR and the SR is 100,000 square feet minimum for OSR and 80,000 for SR. So it's
minimal, but I mean, it's 20%,
Yep.
25% increase.
It's
I'm going by
20,000
what
square
Brittany
feet.
just said, the facts, 100,000 square foot lots to 80,000 square foot lots.
Based on the sketch plan, which is all we have to work by, the difference would be between about 60%.
Well, I think
He was requesting
we're
additional
making numbers fit our individual arguments here, and you got to be careful not to do that. We don't have a sketch plan that we can rely on. We're talking about rezoning property, and if the property gets rezoned, at that point, the developer will come in with sketch plans, preliminary plats, and that's when you start dealing in depth with the density. This density, this particular plan that he gave us before has 12 units on it. Quite possibly the next one you'll see would have 10, or maybe they'd come in with 14 if they clustered these. If they didn't have individual units, if you had regular row, if you could put some row townhouses in here, cluster them, you can pull this development in tighter so you've got more open space. There's all kinds of ways of developing this, but as Don said before, it's the city, if the city rezones this property to allow a different kind of development, you deal with that when the plans come in. And we can't deal with that tonight. We can't rezone this property or not rezone it based on what somebody might come in and then want to develop. So that's really off the table. And but I'm just struggling to find out to come up with where the negative impacts are to the lake. That's a very small open water area on that lake, so there can't be a lot of boat traffic. I assume there isn't water skiing and things out here all day long. And
On the weekend there, it's an amazing amount of boat traffic for a lake that size. We invite you to come out sometime.
well, I lived for many years on Clark Lake, and very small, and you could walk across the boats on holiday weekends especially, and it was but it is what it is. I mean, that was where people lived. No, we're not taking questions from the audience at this point or comments.
No.
And but I just can't, I'm having trouble coming up with this, where the large negative impact's going to be from this. I could see when a developer comes in with a plan and we look at this boardwalk going out to the lake And this particular one shows, looks like 3 or 4 places that you could dock a boat. That could be extremely limited, you know, that could be limited to 2, it could be limited to none. It's just simply, this is an access to take your canoe or kayak out there and go out there and sit and, like they were talking about on the Clark Lake problem, going out there and having a cup of coffee and sit and look at the loons. You know, but for the people that are living up on top of this hill, if they want to say, well, let's go down to the lake, it looks to me like that's a trek and a half to get down there. You know, so people aren't just going to get up and go out water skiing here. So that could be eliminated and controlled by the developments when they come in. That's the way I see that, so.
Okay. I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions for Brittany. An individual had referenced Ann Beaver. She had read a letter, and it provided really good context on why this is zoned and what their conditions are for that zoning. And I just wanted to read a portion of that. I'll give you a brief overview. She had worked with Mark Ronnie of Grandview Lodge. He's the person that controls everything at Grandview Lodge. They do a lot of clustered homes there. And she said in 2006, the ordinance language at the time did not allow for what Grandview wanted to do on a certain parcel. Yet the commission agreed that the plan presented was a much better way to develop the parcel. It protected the natural features of the land and the lake while still providing a reasonable number of clustered home sites. So my question is, in the city itself, we have these 2 different kinds of zoning, OSR and SR. Since 2006, since this language was developed, how often have we granted a rezone application from these 2 classifications? Because it seems that most developers who would be purchasing a property, they want to increase the density. So it would be to their advantage by changing the rezone. Do you have any background information on how often this has happened?
I can't give you exact numbers. However, I can say based on the future land use map that was formulated in 2007, if I recall correctly, all except one area of the city that was designated as shoreland or rural preservation has been rezoned to shoreland residential. That I can confirm. That's what I'm saying, is the ones that have been designated as rural preservation have been rezoned to shoreline residential, besides the very northwestern corner of the city, which is where this other development is. And just a little more context on this development, there are 2 houses in it.
Okay. For me personally, a rezone application, there has to be some merit for it to go forward. In our we had referenced the last applicant who was here before, who hasn't quite done. I, at the time, said I was fine with the residential change just based on what he was planning. And I think that's a huge feature when you're looking at a rezone application. You can't just throw out a rezone without knowing what the developer's plan is. And at that time, there was 3 riparian lots versus, you know, where we're having 15 homes access 1 narrow spot on an environmentally protected lake. So for me, I am a little apprehensive in this case in approving a rezone just based on the fact that the developer already told us that the reason for the rezone was just simply for density. And for me, I don't think that's good enough reason.
Yeah.
So. But
I don't disagree with that.
No,
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Can I address some of the
Sure,
comments? Is
certainly.
that all right?
Yep.
So first of all, I do want to clarify that the plans that came before you we've been here twice. I was not here at the last meeting. And they were based on using OSR and the density increased chart. So that was the number that we came with the first time. The second time we listened to your comments, we came in with a reduced number. I think it was 13. And, you know, again, you said we do not want we don't want to do any more density increases. So at this point, between OSR, right now, we can have 9 units based on very rough calculations, right? I told you, we don't have wetlands, we don't have 100% calculations on bluffs, steep slopes, but we will when we come in with a preliminary plat. Going from OSR to SR, that only potentially changes it to 1 or 2 units. So the comment of it's going to be 20 units or it's going to be 13 units is not the case. If you look at the piece of property, you have 600 feet of lake shore. You could right now have 3 lake homes on that property. We could subdivide it, do 3 lake homes, meet the requirements, and then have a bunch of backlots. So there are, right now we're saying that we're only going to have 2 units, or we're only allowed 2 units on tiers, right? Because with a PUD, you have to break up your property in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. You have to break that up, you do the calculation, and you're only allowed a certain amount of units in tier 1, a certain amount of units in tier 2, and a certain amount of units in tier 3. With the numbers that we calculated, right now we have 2 in tier 1 and 4 and 5 in tier 2. So majority of those are getting pushed back. Mr. Harris mentioned that we are on top of the hill away from the lake. That is very much true. If Bass Lake Road stays where it is, it stays where it is. It's a pre-existing road. If that's the plan, that's the plan. We're not going to be vacating unless the city drives that request. If it does, there's plans into keeping it easements for walking path for the public. You know, there's the one thing that I want to make sure that is clear is we're not going to be getting 20 units. We're not going to be getting 13 units. It's impossible if you're not going to be, if we bring up a plan to you and you're not going to be willing to increase the densities, which you have said numerous times, that's not going to be possible. I just wanted to make that statement and make sure that it's clear that there won't be 20 units on this. There'll be at most 9, maybe 10. And it all depends. There could be 7 after we do wetlands, after we do bluff analysis. You know, we're just looking at not investing a lot of time and money to do a plan and bring it forth to you and then say, well, no, we're going to change it to SR. And then we have to start all over again. And believe it or not, that's not a simple change. It's a very complicated change. So we're trying to put all our ducks in a row first before we spend a lot of time and money and energy, you know, having a plan that we don't know is even going to be presentable to you. And that's why we come here for a site plan review. And that's why we've been here 3 times.
Thank you. Those were very good comments. They're all right on. I think that we can all assure everybody, the audience, everybody that's spoke tonight, and with your regard for the lake and the development and the traffic that's going to be on the roads, whether the zoning stayed the same or it got changed. When the developer comes in for action on a sketch plan or on a preliminary plat, I think everybody can rest assured that nothing is going to get pushed through here, through this planning commission, and I assume through the city, that doesn't meet the needs of this property. But there's 2 sides to this development. You know, there's always been the statement that if you like the view, you should buy it. You know, and the owner of this property, the Donovan Estate or whatever it was, but they're entitled to their best and highest use of this property as well. The value of that property, they've sat on it for years, and they've got the right to develop their property that's sensible and sane, that doesn't interfere with either nature to any great extent or the neighbors or anybody else. And I feel very strongly about that. So, you know, if this property is so valuable as open space, somebody should take up a collection and purchase it if that's the case and turn it into a park or whatever you want. But so far as development goes, again, I can assure you that nothing is going to come through here that is going to be negative impact. It just isn't going to happen, correct?
Correct.
And so I don't think people you shouldn't be, this is not Pequot Lakes. It's the fact that if somebody, well, I don't want to get into that, but.
Not a,
Buildings.
it's buildings, but the public comments are closed.
But we don't know what, you can call them buildings, you can call them cottages, you can call them cabins, you can call them townhouses, you can call them condominiums if you want to put them all together and sell airspace. I mean, that's what can be done. But these are going to be livable units. I assume they'd be year-round houses. You know, these are going to be buildings. These are not, you know, you think of cottages, somebody's going to rent it out and it's going to be something you visit on weekends, but I'm sure that's not what these are meant to be. But I don't know, it's more than likely if we didn't recommend in zone, if we recommended to rezone this property or we recommended against it, it would make no difference. I think that the city council has spoken, you know, as to where they're leaning, and the number of rezonings that have happened over the, you know, the vast number of properties that have come in have been rezoned. Chances are whatever happens here tonight and whatever we recommend to the council, this is probably going to end up SR. And that's my guess. So, but if there's a difference between, if the developer can put 9 or 10 quality units on this and you can get one more quality unit perhaps, or one more that doesn't impact the site negatively with a different zoning, I think it increases tax bases, it increases, you know, there's benefits to development as well as negative sides to it. So, but that's my opinion.
Mr. Chair, I would like to state my opinion too, just.
Yep, go ahead.
You said questions before, so I just took it as questions. So
Okay.
I do believe that this should stay as, excuse me, open space residential, because I think it has environmental qualities that need to be preserved. And that just allows for a few less units. I personally like the site plan for a planned unit development because there are requirements for open space. So you have to take the wetlands and the steep slopes and the bluffs out before you can figure out how many units are allowed. Whereas if you're just going to break it up into lots, you just have square footage on the lot. This has to, with the planning development, you have to have homeowners association. There are a lot of different things, and then plus it has to go through us. We have to agree to it for the plan. Just because the city council overturned what we recommended doesn't mean that we can't keep trying either. I believe that this should remain open space residential because of the environmental situation that is out there. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm from a development background. My family owns a resort. We have many resorts across the state. And so I'm always kind of the mindset of property rights, because that's kind of where my background lies. But I also understand as we get into this, when you are developing a property, I understand where you're coming from in terms of the enormous costs that it takes, that a lot of people don't know about, that goes into even getting to a preliminary plat. And you're talking about tiering and all, it gets very complicated. So I can appreciate the fact that there is a lot of investment that has to be done. So some people had commented that, you know, there's just not a lot of information. And a lot of that is because you need more guidance from us and what you're allowed to do in order to develop a parcel the certain way it is. We're not spending or throwing your money out the window on something that's not even going to happen. It's not feasible. On the flip side, as I look through this, I referred back to Ann's statement again, and I think overall, I think there's an appropriate time for rezone applications if it suits. And I think part of this, part of what they did here, when Mark had originally developed, Ronnie had originally developed this parcel where she was talking about why they inserted this different language, because it was important at the time. And I think sometimes it's still important. It can be applied to what's going on now. It's not necessarily where you had talked, Don had talked, or Gary had talked about how times have changed, and I understand that, but some things are kind of consistent. So normally I would be siding with Gary, but this time I'm leaning more towards Kristen's perspective here, just because I think what the previous planning commission had made sense for density. And that's what I'm coming down to, is density. And developing a property, especially on a lake like this that is deemed a naturally environment lake. So that's where I'm at. So Kristen, would you like to make a motion?
I will take a shot at this. Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to recommend the denial of the request to rezone the property with the property identification number 281-00668 from OSR to SR, based on the findings of fact being it isn't consistent with section 3.7 of the zoning ordinance, specifically items A, D, G, H, K, M, and O. Is that adequate?
Can you say those letters again?
Of course. A, D, G, H, K, M, and O.
M as in Maggie.
Pardon me?
M as in Maggie, or N as in Nancy?
Mom, M as in mom.
Okay.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye. Nay.
Motion carries.
So it's up to the city council.
Right.
When is the council meeting?
When is the council meeting?
Third Wednesday of the month.
No, third Tuesday.
That's right, I changed it. I'm sorry.
So that would be the 15th of June.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
That was good. All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business, the sketch plan for the Next Shift Enterprises LLC.
Nobody here?
Is there anyone on behalf of Next Shift Enterprises here? Kevin McCormick is not here, but he's the surveyor of the project.
Okay. Well, I guess we could just start with you then.
Yeah, any concerns I can relay to the developer, if you guys have any. I don't know really much of anything about this property. This really kind of changed potential uses in the recent history, so I don't know a ton, but I can do my best.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chair, because this is a non-voting issue, I can make comments on this one. I looked at the property and two things jumped out at me. If you put the 9 houses in like they're proposing on the draft sketch plan here, we'll call it, it's going to mean almost clear cutting every tree on the lot. Your backyard's going to face 371. And it's not going to be very much screening, and then it's going to, I think, going to look pretty bad. So if they were to go ahead on this, maybe some custom grading and the saving of trees and shrubs would be mandatory rather than just doing what they normally do. And then there's the issue of on the east side of the trail, and there are some, it looks like it's a continuation of lots on the east side of the trail, which narrows down to almost nothing when you get up to the third or fourth house. I wonder if they should take a look at that, and I don't think they can say that the lots are lakeside lots, because I don't think you're going to have a problem with crossing over the trail and doing stuff like that. If there's something that can be done with those small parcels to prevent problems later on, now's the time to do it at the sketch plan stage. So those are just some comments that I had.
Well, those little pieces that are over there would also, if they became part of the lots that are being developed, they would also impact the width of those lots.
Right.
Because these lots become riparian and non-riparian lots.
Yeah.
And rather than 100-foot lots, they'd be 150, I believe. So you'd lose about 4 lots or 3 lots.
Yeah, so he's got to take care of that.
I'm assuming they don't want those to transfer title with the lots because of that. That would be my guess. So, but, without the developer here, it's, it's pretty hard to have any constructive comments, but those things that might want to, maybe the city attorney might want to chime in on the ownership of those little blocks that are out next to the trail.
Yeah.
I think we need some legal opinion on that.
Well, not only that, it's the right-of-way ownership from the state.
Yes.
So we need more information on that. And I think it would be beneficial to the property owner to know what his riparian rates are, because obviously that's going to affect the value.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm pretty sure that the trail is all fee ownership on the part of the state, because it was the same way when Rusty Gibbons was in and the housing development in town. That was actual property. That was fee title property adjoining his development. So I would have assumed this is all the same. Chad, do you know anything about that?
We talked about it earlier too, and that's the same concern.
Yeah, okay.
Also, I don't recall now who asked, but the public beach is listed on there. It looks like it's about halfway through lot 9, just because there was that question. So.
Oh, no, didn't see that. Well, I think the developer wants some constructive
He needs to
comments on this. He should be here.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
I would just move we table it.
Okay.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Sketch plan for Alluring Pines West. Please state your name.
Pat Trotter with Stonemark Land Surveying, here on behalf of the property owners Shane and Tammy Lewick.
Okay.
Quickly, we'll start out, it's non-riparian.
Good for you.
It is, currently, there's 4 living units on the site over, 15-acre site. He's looking at 4 oversized lots. The one lot will contain the existing units. It's sized for that type of density and zoned shoreline residential, so that I believe it meets all density. The other 3 lots will be carved out, will be all oversized lots, meeting all requirements for the shoreline res non-riparian zoning. Access for 2 lots will be off Camp Lincoln Road to the west, and to the east will be through easement roads. There's a potential, if you look on the drawing,
Sorry.
You know which property is ours?
I was trying to pull up.
If you look at the county aerial, would be a better look at it.
Okay.
He also owns a strip of land that connects directly to 13. He has not decided whether or not to include that in the plat. So that could be an outlot used for access in lieu of a deeded easement across existing roadways. And it's the strip where it's labeled, I think it's red pine. It's just to the east of this parcel.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right here.
Correct, yeah.
This used to be an old resort.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Brittany, just a question. I remember that they were in and they did some moving around in the lot lines a little while ago. Has this been within 3 years? There's 3-year time limit on stuff.
It hasn't happened since I've been here. I don't know anything about that, so I can't speak to it. I
It
guess.
was quite some time ago, yeah, well over 3 years.
At least 2, because that's how long I've
At
been.
least two. Okay, I just want to make sure that it was still legal.
Yeah.
Just a question I have for staff is as drawn on the sketch plan, one lot runs directly adjacent to the tennis court. I don't know if the tennis court is treated as a structure for structure setback purposes. It's asphalt covering with a chain link fence around a tennis court.
It would need to meet the 5-foot setback just because we would treat it as a patio or a driveway.
Thank you.
Can you identify it looks like there's 3 or 4 structures on hard to describe if it's on the east end. Can you identify what those are?
You have a tennis court up in the northeast corner.
Yep.
There's a garage and a cabin right next to each other, nearly adjacent to the tennis court. There's another cabin to the south of that, garage and a shed that's used by that cabin, and a duplex to the west.
Okay.
They all have their own septic systems and they all fit inside this proposed lot too.
I guess for me, the only concern I would have is access. So just make sure the access points are there and we have an easement for all the lots. Otherwise, I think it's fine, in my opinion.
Mr. Chair, I was just wondering, what are the shaded areas? It's kind of a
Shaded
side
areas
hatch.
are your steep slope areas that we've subtracted from the buildable areas.
Okay. And do you have access to County Road 13, you said, or is that just by Camp Lincoln?
There is access, use Alluring Pines Road.
Gotcha.
Deeded
Thank you.
access. And it could be, could add a strip to this plat as an outlot for direct access. That's still under consideration.
Any
Looks
other?
like a slam dunk to me.
How
No
do you,
such thing, Gary.
how do you propose to take care of the driveway easement there that goes across lot 1?
Across lot 1.
Mhm.
Also via easement, there'll be an easement in place for that.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Also likely an easement in place. The strip that we would add for direct access would be on the east side adjacent to this property, and there would be no need for that easement.
David?
My questions are along the lines of roads too
Mhm.
and access. So the garden circle will be the access or will not be the access?
As yet to be decided.
Okay.
Not to be coy.
Okay.
Honestly, he hasn't decided. There's that strip that he would add as an outlot
Okay.
for direct access into this site. Likely, there may be an easement retained that they'll use and keep this strip as permanent access if needed.
Okay. And then for lots 3 and 4, you said there would be another outlot created or there would be?
No, I'm sure land will, right away will be dedicated
Right
for
away on
Camp
that
Lincoln
side.
Road, yeah. The
Okay.
north part is dedicated to County Road 13 through another plat to the north.
Okay.
And we'd continue that width down throughout the whole plat and take all of Camp Lincoln Road and make it truly public.
You're gonna
Okay.
plat this?
This would be a plat.
You're gonna plat it? You're not gonna
This would
do
be a plat.
meets and bounds subdivisions?
This would be a plat, we're told.
Okay, good. It's best way.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. All right, next, the sketch plan for the Pinewood crossing. You're it.
Yeah.
That's what not riparian.
Why can't they all be like that?
That's just a stress, non-riparian. Okay.
I told whispered to Chad, I said, maybe we should say we're gonna build a monorail down to the lake. No, I wouldn't. No.
Guys, just speak your name for the record, please.
Yes, Doug Arndt, Terra Vista Developers.
Chad Connor with
You want to briefly touch on what your plans are?
Yeah, I'll kind of give the overview and Chad can give the details. This 15-acre parcel is immediately across County Road 18 from Pine Trails. Was acquired, I think, about the same time. It predated I don't know if it was from the same developer or not, but it was not as far along. It's still raw land. The school district, I believe, had a bus barn in there at one point that was torn down and removed. But it's a similar property. If you walked through Pine Trails a little bit and saw the tall pine trees and stuff, it's very similar. A little more topography in there. Really pretty piece of property. We decided to move ahead with it based on how rapidly things are moving with Pine Trails, and also make it a little less, more uniform, a little more cookie cutter, more of a geared towards retirement development with not townhomes, with single family homes, but with minimal side yards. It'll be a all-inclusive homeowners association, meaning the homeowners association will plow the driveways, mow the lawns, take care of exterior maintenance on the homes, that sort of thing. We've gotten a lot of interest in that type of home in Pine Trails. We chose not to go that way. We wanted to make it more family oriented, which we've been successful with. And in talking with, actually, my sister-in-law, Mary Jetland, is very active up here with a number of organizations, and particularly the school district, among others. And talking to some of the other employers, workforce housing, as you know, is a real issue up here. So we're trying to make it as affordable as possible and still keep it in the same level of quality as Pine Trails. There's no vinyl siding. It's going to be hardy board or LP smart siding, just as Pine Trails is. Just really nice quality, smaller homes. They're going to be 2 to 3 bedroom, 2,000 feet plus or minus, probably limited to a 2-car garage. None of it's cast in stone, but that's the direction we're going. Most likely all single level, some with basements. There'll be a couple potential walkouts. There was a tree inventory done back, I don't know, whatever the date was, 06, 07. So what Chad has put together is not quite final, although the roads are I think finalized. We may adjust the house alignment a little bit and lot alignment to try and preserve as many trees as possible. It's not a terribly dense development, so that's kind of it as the overview. Our plan, timing wise, is to go through the city approval process here and hopefully be finalized in August, with the idea of getting the road and sewer in yet this year and breaking ground next spring on models and homes. We've already got one pre-sold and he hasn't even seen the plans.
It's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem, yes.
Couple things maybe to add to. Historically, this property did actually abut Pine Trail Homes before Highway 18 was realigned to come through here. So that's taken approximately 100 or so feet off of the east side there. And now with that new traffic flow, obviously a nice road. Just following what Doug said, you know, there's already some force main and there's already some gravity sewer lines in here in play. We're designing the road corridor to kind of mirror, follow those so that those will become part of that public right-of-way, public easement area. The thought right now is that, I guess you can see Broadleaf Drive, the east-west road that's proposed through the development would be dedicated as a public street. And then the thought is the cul-de-sacs would be private streets, not dedicated to the city, but just owned by the development and the homeowners association. So those would not be city maintained street. There may be utility easements over them for sewer, that type of thing. But the idea is to keep them private if at all possible. We have done a delineation of the wetlands, so the wetlands you see on there are accurate. They were part of our layout as we massage this layout and kind of speak with engineers and figure out what the connections on each end look like and look at grading and site grading. And as Doug indicated, the tree location survey really is going to kind of help us tweak these, and the topography will too. So with that, I think we pretty much covered it. So.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
What is this building down here? Is that not, like, is that a building, neighboring building on your property?
It's an encroaching shed, yeah.
Okay.
The only thing I can see on the west side, where the new road comes into Pine Haven Road, that I don't have to look at a traffic engineer, but that looks a little sharp as a turn there. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, Don, thanks for bringing that up. Our subsequent layouts as we massage this is going to be more of a T intersection, you know, into there. So it'll be I would guess, as long as the city is acceptable to that, that's the type. Initially, we thought maybe Pine Haven would maybe be some sort of a curve there, but there's some utility pedestals and transformers and such that are probably making that prohibitive, and traffic and the sewer easements all make it.
Pine Haven is not paved right now, is it?
Yes, down to the,
It is paved.
down to where we're showing the connection, yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, to answer your question, it's gonna probably end up as more of a T intersection.
Go ahead. I was just wondering if you spent any time looking at more of a clustering, you know, especially the area that went down to the south, the cul-de-sac there, you know, rather than having, I don't know, it all has to do with markets, of course, whether maybe duplexes or 3s or 4s, you know, townhomes that are attached in there, it would increase your open space, and that's the only thing that I would look at. But
we did have a housing study done. Her name escapes me. Maxfield, thank you. Maxfield came back with their recommendations is shared walls don't sell in this
fine,
market.
you answered the question.
Yeah.
You know, marketability has a lot to do with development, as we all know. So, but if if the market's not there, then that's fine.
What's the zoning right now?
I believe it's urban residential. If you give me just a second, I can confirm that.
Yeah, be a PUD.
While you're doing that, I have a question, and this is kind of with David too. So on the north part of the parcel, you said you have this wetland delineated, and I know Nisswa has a much larger setback than, say, the Crow Wing County does. And the turnaround is butting up right next to it. At least that's what it shows on the sketch plan. Can you kind of David, can you give us details on what is recommended for a setback, or how that works with the wetland delineation and a road turnaround like that?
Well, this being a private road, or intended to be a private road, I'm looking at the radius here and seeing if that's meeting a city standard for a public street with like a 40-foot radius. That's probably what we're looking at here, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
So
it's a 50-foot radius.
50-foot radius, so.
And that's paved, yeah, paved 50-foot radius.
So a private road, and that's intended so that school buses can navigate that in a forward motion and get turned around. If school buses are not intended to ever go down these, that could be potentially smaller as a private street. You'd have to go into that knowingly as a private street.
You have to be able to, and you have to be able to turn fire trucks in there too and get them around.
That was one of our questions coming into this,
Yeah.
Meeting was, could we, look at some sort of an acceptable T turnaround or a hammer handle or whatever you would like to call it.
Right. But assuming that it all leans toward the wetlands, you probably need a space of, depending on the steepness of the topography, at least 20 feet or more to be able to capture that water before it goes into a wetland.
Which I'm assuming would be in the SWIP plan, so.
This is just sketch plan.
This is just a sketch plan, but that would be in the SWIP, so.
Yep, and that wetland right there is the road ditch.
Right.
That's what that is too. I mean, other than that larger area to the north.
Well, you've done a nice job on the other side, on Broadleaf.
I
that-
can't take a whole lot of credit. That's been my wife and her sister that have driven the designs and.
You're sitting here, take it.
Yeah.
But it
This
looks
is
nice.
being recorded.
There's a lot of trees gonna come out of this site. I mean, this is there's a lot of trees in here. I mean, this thing's just solid. But it's gonna be just like over there. You leave
Have
as
you
many
thought
as you
about
can,
custom-
and it looks really nice driving through there. It's just welcoming,
Have you
so.
thought about custom grading to save a lot of trees?
Yeah, we haven't gotten that far yet. I mean, our directive from the family is that we want to preserve as much as we can. So when we get to that, we will. It's, as an overall, as witnessed by the playground that we put in at Pine Trails there. Yeah, we have to make money doing this, but we want to build a real asset for the community. And that's, we're not going to cut corners on anything. We don't need to and we won't.
Oh, it's a nice job on the other side, on the existing one, so.
The dock's questionable.
That is, but pardon my opposition to that.
I agree. I think it's like if you're going in Nisswa, you still want that up north feel. That's kind of what our comprehensive plan is and how you did it. And it is dense, but you did it in a way that makes it still feel like an up north feel by keeping all those trees. So if you're going to be doing it the same way, what it looks like, I think it's going to be a really good addition.
You think the target market in here would be younger families or?
It's
or
going to be a mix.
Seniors or?
It's going to be, I don't want to call it transient, but it's going to be school teachers, Grandview year-round employees that, can afford a $350,000 house. Unfortunately, because of the price increases, across the street in Pine Trails, I mean, we started about 380 now. And so the goal is to keep it smaller, more cost effective.
Materials keeps going like it is, it'll be 480 before long.
Yeah.
It's really horrible.
But anyhow, that's, it's going to be, it should fit the need from what we've seen, so.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to say, very nice presentation, very nice job. I think this is a great use of that area. Thank you for delineating the wetlands ahead of time. And we actually looked at one of the lots over across the road. So I think this is a perfect use for that area too.
Don't encourage them too much
I'm
because
sorry.
you want to be rougher on when they come in.
Save those trees though.
Comes back with a preliminary plat, it might be a whole different discussion.
I like this one. We don't know about that one yet.
No, it will, I rest assured it will not get any more dense. No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to old business, there is none. Planning and zoning administrators report.
I'll keep it short this month. We did have 12 new permits last month. 4 of them were dwellings, so we are starting to get into the rhythm of that. Kind of to allude to what Mr. Arndt said, they are about, I believe, a third sold out in Pine Trail Homes. I have started issuing permits for North Pines, as well as Mr. Gibbons has been rolling down that track as well. So we definitely have a housing boom upon us. We did have 4 new violations, one of which we technically discussed tonight, 2 of which have received their after the fact permits, and we do still have it's either 2 or 3 active violations at this point that we're kind of working with property owners on. So the number's small, but the amount of violations is definitely increasing, just inherent to the time of year. I also did want to make a point to just say thank you to all of you. I realize that with the housing boom and with the development and everything, these things do become contentious. And so I just really appreciate your time and effort and intelligence. And I just appreciate you guys. So thank you.
Brittany, I have one question.
Okay.
And it was on there with Traxler. It was him with the additional cars.
Yep.
Well, so here's the thing, and it's in a commercial zone along 371, and I don't know the background. Don can probably speak towards that a little bit, but if it just doesn't seem fair to me that a dock place or one of the marine places can have hundreds of boats displayed, and he wants to have, I mean, right now I drove past it and he had some classic cars. He had a Lambo sitting there. And I mean, I just think it's kind of restrictive based on what the zoning is, that he's only allowed this. And again, maybe you can give me some more background.
We were concerned about him turning it into a used car lot.
Okay.
And used car lot is much different than what he's been permitted for. And he's starting to put some of his cars behind the fence now, so they're hidden. But it was the car lot concern.
Well, even if it was a car lot, I mean, what is permitted for a car lot? I mean, it is commercially zoned.
Right. He doesn't have a conditional use to be selling used cars, though. His request when he went through the conditional use permit process was for boats and sales and services of boats. There also, someone had questioned if there were state licensures for the sales of the used vehicles on the property, which I have not received an answer for yet.
I think it depends on how many.
Yeah, and there are different, depending on the day that you go past that lot, it definitely affects how it looks. There's been days where I drive past and there's 2 cars, and there's days I drive past and there's 14 cars. So that definitely varies too. I don't truly know where their customers would park with the amount they've had in there a couple times.
Well, I mean, the nature of the business is he does car cleaning. I mean, doesn't he do detailing work? Isn't that the point of it?
Yeah, it's detailing.
So there's going to be cars in the parking lot. Has he ever, I mean, instead of getting these violations, has he ever thought about coming in to get something changed a little bit so he doesn't?
I can't say. I have not received any feedback or response to any of the letters I've sent.
Okay.
Mr. Traxler is one of those that you want to watch closely.
Now, there used to be he had a second tier of boat storage back there too, racks, and they're gone now. Is that?
Oh, I didn't know that they were gone.
I didn't know it either.
They took them down.
Interesting.
We
I'm not
only
sure
had
on
one boat
that.
on there.
You were on
One boat.
top of them for that, so.
No.
But just like some other individuals doing business in the city, that there are a few individuals you watch a little closer than others, type of thing.
I understand that, but I'm just by driving by when I'm driving by, I think it doesn't look in disrepair. Again, he's displaying classic cars, which I don't think anybody really has a huge problem with. So, I mean, he's not responding to any of your letters, but if you start issuing violations, maybe he'll
I assume
respond.
He also will not be paying $100 a day either.
Likely the next step would be legal counsel to essentially consider the revocation of his conditional use permit. Just based on past minutes, that seems to be the trend, is once you're using your business for a use that has not been permitted and you get the notice saying we'll work with you, you need to contact us. If you don't, we just bring it to a new public hearing to basically take it away.
Okay. All right, any additional questions, comments?
Question. Did you have an interview with a potential other member for the commission or not? How are we doing? I'm feeling,
At this time, we have received the one applicant that we tried to set up an interview with. Ultimately, he did cancel on the interview and felt he was not the correct choice for the position. At this time, I haven't received any further applications. I have reached out to Ann Beavers, Ann Lothman. I apologize, I'm drawing a blank on the gentleman I reached out to who used to be on the commission, as well as the past chamber director. I've been kind of planting that seed wherever I can, but ultimately at this time.
I have my doubts whether you're gonna strike out on all that. They left because they wanted to leave.
Well, I thought maybe if I, sweeten up a
you
little.
get burned out.
Gotta raise the pay, I guess.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I have two questions, Brittany, on the land use permits.
Yeah.
I and Josh are super sensitive about this issue. That's why I bring it up. There's one here on industrial circle, excuse me. Construct a 50 by 84 foot dwelling with attached garage meeting all such. Are we seeing applications based upon our change in the ordinance?
Yes, yep, he was informed that he only had 150% storage area to living space.
And there's another one 30 by 40 with a dwelling unit inside. How many of these are we starting to see now?
Quite a few.
Quite a few. Honestly, that's what I expected though, especially with lumber prices the way they are. These are cheap to build, cheap to maintain. I think that we definitely got in front of the horse on, or put the cart where it's supposed to be on the horse on this one, because it's definitely coming. Even other cities are dealing with it right now too.
Well, even the 50 by 84 foot is a big building.
Yes. It is.
I don't know how many toys you need to fill up a building that size, but
Would you like an adjustment to our original?
I'm just saying, it's
Well,
a
I
big
would
building,
like-
that's all.
I don't think.
I guess the question was more is how is the new ordinance doing?
Yeah.
I can say that it has definitely deterred a few people from putting up buildings similar to the ones that kind of initiated this change.
It's an extremely generous ordinance, so.
Yes, there have been,
It was more generous than
yeah,
I would have done.
I would say more people than not ultimately end up just changing their plans to meet it, but there have been a couple that say on to the next, so to speak. But I don't anticipate this going away anytime soon, though, to be honest.
When you were looking through this, do you see that maybe we could make some adjustments here and there after going through the application process with a couple of individuals?
I do feel that the ordinance is rather lenient. However, I don't have a major concern with it. I personally think that the height of the building typically becomes more of an issue than the length and the width. Because for instance, when I drive down Nashway, the first thing I see is the height. You don't even see how deep back into the property it goes. But aside from setting different height standards for different buildings, I don't know that that would be
Has the
easily
council
fixable.
changed that now to 35?
Yeah.
That was the recommendation,
Yeah.
35. Okay.
You want a bigger, want a taller?
No.
No, I was wondering if-
I'm asking you if the council changed that.
No, not yet.
Not yet?
No, I plan to bring that before you all in July. And just so you all are aware, July is also another very content-heavy month. We have one rezone, 2 preliminary plats, and a variance for sure. So I'm guessing that will be an earlier meeting as well, depending on what we get between now and the
Plats, you never know because of the cost. We talked about that before. Josh mentioned it too. The cost of getting to preliminary plat stage.
Nobody better
is
get
enormous.
sick or
You know,
take
I mean, we're talking
vacation.
tens of thousands of dollars to get to a preliminary plat stage.
Yep.
And, you gotta have a developer who's determined to.
Don, since you're going to be going to the city council meeting, maybe you can bring that up if they want, going back to the Schaus conversation, if they want to have us look at that again to make it more restrictive. You just bring it up.
Well, they'll turn to Brittany and say, Brittany, what are you seeing out there? And, okay.
I think my personal recommendation would be to get through this summer, and then I could do more analysis of the numbers and
Yeah.
what we're really kind of dealing with. I think right now it's a little early to make that determination.
Have you had any luck in, now that you're a city planner, having the ability to go back and look at some of those projects after they had been built to make sure that they're abiding by the,
Not for them just yet. We have started doing the inspection process. At this point, a lot of them have been for the planned unit developments that are already in place, but I anticipate we'll have one soon.
okay.
I don't know how you'd have time to do much of it anyway.
Just run on
You know,
fumes.
the packages, with the work you have to go through to develop these packages every month,
Well, we just don't let her play the computer games anymore. Yeah.
Solitaire.
Solitaire,
Oh,
right.
but you know, as long as we're passing kudos around too, you know, we got the best minute taker in the world over here too,
That is
Maggie.
true.
I never seen pages and pages and pages, and
It's very detailed.
I found one thing last month, just one thing that slipped past her, but you know, but it never happened.
It does happen.
So,
We're pretty lucky. We have a great team here. Staff, elected officials, appointed officials, all of them. We're pretty lucky.
okay,
All right.
I move to adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.
Did I usurp your?